Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we've got another cool GPD handheld to take a look at today. This is their new XP. This is an Android device that's kind of the successor to their very popular GPD XD. And we're going to be taking a closer look at this and what it's all about in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that this came in free of charge from GPD. However, they are not paying for this review, nor are they reviewing or approving what you're about to see before it was uploaded, and all of the opinions you're about to hear are my own. So let's get into it now and see what this new Android handheld is all about. Now, the price point on this is about $340 at the time I'm shooting this video. That price is on the official GPD AliExpress store that I have linked down below in the video description. These things are sold in a lot of different places at a variety of prices. So I would always suggest go to their official store first to see what their price is, and then compare that to where you're looking to buy from, just to make sure you're not paying too much for it. Now, when you look at this and you look at its price, you might be wondering, why would you buy this when the Steam Deck is going to come out for not much more money and be able to play full PC games? And the Steam Deck, of course, will be much more powerful than this will be. Again, it will play full PC games versus this one that can only stream those games from someplace else. And I guess the short answer is that if you can wait until the Steam Deck comes out, then you might want to wait, especially if your goal is to play PC games. If you play a lot of mobile games or a lot of emulators, this might be a good device to hold you over until that more powerful device is available next year. And it's funny, at the time I was shooting this video, like literally sitting here in the chair, I got an email telling me the Steam Deck has been delayed several months. So you can get this now versus something that you might have a hard time getting when it finally does come out in the near future. But comparing them, the Steam Deck, of course, is much more powerful and capable, and it's up to you to decide which device might fit your needs the best. Now, with that out of the way, let's take a look now at the hardware. Now, this is made out of plastic, but it feels like a very heavy-duty, high-quality plastic. Nothing flexes or creaks as you're playing your games on it. It actually feels really nice and sturdy, even when you're holding it from one side. Now, what's really cool about this is that it's modular. So right now I've got the Xbox configuration here, where we've got the two thumbsticks, the buttons, and the D-pad. And on the right-hand side of the unit here, you can actually take off the controller part. So I can take this off, put this little spacer on here that just protects the port, and now I can do kind of a hybrid mode where I can control part of my game with the thumbstick and the other part of my game with the touchscreen. And one thing GPD says is this might be good for MOBAs and those sorts of games where you want a mix of control surfaces. They also have this controller, which they included in the box, which is a first-person shooter controller, where you can control some things with the touch screen and then set up shortcut buttons here on the right-hand side. And they also have a trigger here that's a little further down that will allow you to kind of aim with your thumb and shoot the trigger with the trigger button. And they have a really cool overlay feature that I'll show you in a few minutes, where you can customize even touchscreen games to work with these physical control surfaces, which I think is pretty neat. So we'll dive into that in a few minutes. I have generally been just using the controller thing here, just because those are the types of games that I typically play. But it's kind of neat that you do get these things in the box, at least the configuration that they sent me. So you can customize how you want this to play your games based on the game and what works best. Now, the display on this device is an odd choice. Most of these GPD devices have had 720p displays in the past, which had a 16:9 aspect ratio. This one is super wide. It is running at 1080 by 2400. And that means when you're playing 4:3 emulators here, like this RetroArch NES core, you're going to have a lot of letterboxing. Even when you're streaming games from Xbox or GeForce Now or Stadia, you're going to see that level of letterboxing here on the screen. The display, though, looks great. It's 500 nits. It's nice and bright. The colors are crisp on it, but I think it's a little too wide for the use case. One thing you'll also notice here is that there's a camera punched out in the lower left-hand corner. That is used for making video calls if you want. So it looks like they took a nice mobile phone display and just kind of integrated it into their design here. And perhaps there wasn't a good 16:9 display that they could find when they were planning out the manufacturing of this one. One other thing to note is that the corners are curved, And so occasionally you'll have interface elements that will be stuck in the bezel here on a lot of your favorite apps. Now you can get at those elements by tapping right at the corner there, but it's still not ideal. This runs at 60 Hertz and it's a 6.81-inch display in total. Again, something you would find on a mid-range smartphone. Now they did up the processing power of this one over the prior generation. This has a MediaTek Helio G95. That's an 8-core processor. It has 2 A76 cores and 6 A55 cores. It has 6 gigabytes of LPDDR4X RAM and 128 gigabytes of onboard storage. And then you can also augment that storage with an SD card that you can pop into its SIM tray at the bottom. And this does have 4G LTE support, and they'll let you run a SIM card and an SD card in that slot at the same time, or you can insert 2 SIM cards to it and work on 2 different networks. This will not take phone calls. It is a data-only device, but you can, of course, make video calls with the camera that's on the front of it. And I found that the compatibility with US networks might be limited based on where you're located and what bands your carrier supports where you live. On screen right now is a list of the bands that this supports, so you may want to check with your carrier and see if those bands are going to work for you before you decide to buy this based on the fact that it has 4G connectivity. It is not a 5G cellular radio. It does, of course, have Wi-Fi on board, but it's AC Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi 6. But I did do some game streaming testing with it, and it was fine. You'll see some examples of that in a few minutes. Additionally, you've got a headphone jack here at the bottom for attaching headphones for better audio quality. It also supports Bluetooth, so you could use Bluetooth headsets if you want. You have stereo speakers here at the bottom. They're not spectacular. They're a little on the tinny side, but it does sound pretty decent and loud, so that's a good thing. And then you've got your USB Type-C port here at the bottom for charging. This, of course, supports faster USB-C power delivery, and it also allows you to hook up on-the-go devices to it, like mice and keyboards and that sort of thing. It does not, though, output display like the old GPDs did. So I tried hooking this up to a few monitors. I did not get display output. So that's one feature that has been removed from the new version of the product that was in the older version. You're also going to notice some vents here at the bottom and top, and that's because there is an active cooling system on this utilizing a fan. The fan runs at a fixed rate, and you can control that rate manually through the pull-down control panel here. So right now I've got it on the low speed, which has been fine for just about everything I've been doing with this device. If you are really pushing it and concerned about throttling, you can run it at the higher speed, which will be a little more higher pitched, but it might get rid of some of that hot air quicker, or you can turn it off completely. But I have not found much of a difference at all in performance between low and high speed running benchmarks on this, but there could be use cases where high speed might work the best for you, and you have that option to switch it on. Now, as far as fan noise is concerned, on the low setting, it's just a little bit louder perhaps than a Nintendo Switch. When you've got it on the high setting, it is more high-pitched, but again, not all that offensive of a fan on this, but I think low should be good enough for most people. Battery life is really great on this. It's got a 7,000 milliamp hour battery, and because you're running Android games and not PC games, I think you'll get a good amount of longevity on this one. It's going to vary based on what game you're playing and how much stress you're putting on the device and how bright your display is, but I think you could easily get 4 to 5, maybe even 6 hours out of some emulators on this if they're not taxing things all that heavily, and much more battery life if you're just watching YouTube or browsing the web or something through some of the other Android apps on board. Speaking of Android apps, it's got its own launcher here, so you might be able to shoehorn something else onto it. I know there's a pretty active community of folks that like to customize these GPD devices, but this is what you get built in, kind of a no-frills launcher here, but your apps as you download them will get added to the interface, and you do have full Google Play support along with Google Services support, so you can connect your Google account for YouTube and Gmail and all those other Google services. And in case you're wondering, it is running with Android 11. Let's take a look now at the controls and how it performs. Now, I've got a big gripe with this controller. This is one of these clicky D-pads, and one of the big problems I'm running into with it is that it's very easy to do an errant diagonal. So check it out. I am not even pushing down the other button here, and I am moving left and right just by rocking on the up arrow. And that's something I was having a lot of trouble with playing through Contra a little bit earlier. I found that the D-pad on the older device is much better suited for 8 and 16-bit games that rely on a D-pad. I'm hoping they can maybe do a hardware revision to resolve this, because right now it's just way too sensitive, and I was constantly doing things that I did not intend to do when I was just trying to shoot up. If you're not right down the middle on this, your guy's going to start moving here, and I can see that being really frustrating for a lot of people. The buttons here aren't bad. They're clicky just like the D-pad is. Not a big deal for me on the buttons, but again, the D-pad is something that really needs to be improved. One thing that did get improved quite a bit are the thumbsticks. What's nice is that these now click, so you can run PC games on these. The prior edition GPDs had a button next to the thumbstick that would be that click, but the sticks themselves did not click, so that's a nice big improvement there. The dead zone on these is not very large. As you can see, just a little bit of movement here, up or down or left and right, will get registered on both of these thumbsticks. Although during a live stream, some viewers noticed that the diagonals do have a slightly larger dead zone than going up, down, left, or right. So just be aware of that. But honestly, in playing a lot of the PC games that I was streaming with this thing, it felt great. Just the right amount of travel and very good sensitivity. And of course, now they click, which they didn't do before. So I think if you're looking at this as something for Xbox Cloud Gaming or Stadia, this is a good solution, I think. It really has a nice controller along with a screen size that's very similar to a mobile device. And I think around the house here, I'll probably be using this a lot to stream my PC games. All right, let's take a look now at customizing the controls. I did put on the FPS adapter here, and we're running PUBG Mobile. Now, right now, this game requires me to use my touch display to control everything, but if I push the button here, I can start dragging controls over things and use the actual physical controls. So, for example, if I take my left control stick and just drag it over this, I can use that for that. Button 6 is the button right here, and if I take button 6 and drag it over to the fist icon there, I can use that to attack. And if I hit save, now when I push this button here, you can see that it's punching, and I can move using the control stick, but control the view with the display like I could before. And then, of course, we can overlay more controls on top. And what will happen here is that every time I click save, it's going to attach these mappings to this app. So the next time I jump into PUBG, these controller settings will be retained. And I think it's pretty neat how easy it is and how kind of seamless with the interface they made this. So this is one thing that I think works very well on this, even for games that don't have native controller support. And of course, you could use the other controller here if you wanted to, but this might be a better use case for this particular game. Now, this device should be well suited for most of the Android library. All the casual games will play nicely. More demanding games like Call of Duty Mobile here also ran great on this. So if you have a lot of Android games you're looking to play, this is going to be a great platform for that. It's not as powerful as an NVIDIA Shield or a Nintendo Switch for that matter, as you'll see in a few minutes with the benchmarks, but for the Android library, this is more than adequate, and all the games I played were quite enjoyable on this device. Now, before we jump into emulation, let's take a look at benchmarks to see where this comes in versus other mobile devices. We'll start off with the 3D Mark Wildlife test, which is a multi-platform test, and there we got a score of 1,354. You can see how this device stacks up to the 9th generation iPad, which will run you about the same amount of money. And it does come in pretty close to what we saw on the Google Pixel 4a, which is a mobile phone. Now look on the bottom there, that's the Asus L210. That is a low-priced Windows laptop running with an Intel Gemini Lake processor. And as you can see, this will do a little bit better than something like that insofar as its graphics and CPU performance is concerned. And next up is the 3D Mark Slingshot test, which gives us a look at both its graphics and CPU performance separately. So the first two scores there are the graphics tests, and the last three are CPU tests. And as you can see, we got a score of 3,032 on the XP, a big bump over the XD Plus, but you can see now that the Google Pixel Snapdragon chip pulls away from the performance here in a couple of key areas, graphics in particular. And you can also see just how much farther ahead Apple's processors are here. And this is where you'll start to see some issues with the higher end emulators. Let's take a look first at the Dolphin emulator, which runs GameCube games. So first up here on Dolphin, we tested Wave Race, which is one of my favorite GameCube games. And here you were seeing the frame rate kind of jump up and down a bit. So it was getting to a full 30 frames per second, and then you would see it dip a little bit and then go back up again. So it wasn't able to really stay consistent. And we did try a bunch of different settings tweaks to see if we could boost the performance up a little bit, but generally this was about the best we could do, and I found switching to Vulkan actually decreased its performance over OpenGL. So not every GameCube game is going to play well on here. But Burnout 2 here, as you can see, actually did run pretty nicely. I would see a few performance hits here and there, like when you did a takedown or something, but generally this game ran better than the Wave Race game did. And from what I'm seeing out there from other folks who've been reviewing these is that the GameCube performance is great for some games, as I discovered, and not so great for others. It's not going to be a 100% here for GameCube, and I would not recommend this if your primary goal is to run GameCube games on a handheld. It just doesn't have quite enough horsepower to get there. It's very close, but not close enough at the moment. But Dreamcast games ran great on this. This is Daytona USA running. As you can see here, we're getting a full 60 frames per second. When I turned on the turbo mode, which gets rid of all the speed controls, it was running in the 100 frames per second territory. So really great if you're looking to take your Dreamcast games on the road. We also tried out Virtua Tennis, which is another one of my go-to games to test out in Dreamcast emulation. This one ran flawlessly also with Redream. It's just a spectacular emulator, and it seems really well paired with this device. So all in, a very good Dreamcast experience. Let's take a look now at PPSSPP. This, of course, is a PSP emulator. I am running this at the basic settings, just kind of booted up the emulator to see how it performed, and tweaking nothing. We're running God of War here at pretty much full speed. It dips down occasionally, but by and large, this thing is performing great for one of these handheld Android devices. So I'm pretty pleased overall with the performance for some of these consoles that didn't always run so great on these Android devices. I would love for GameCube to perform a little better, but you're going to get a lot more out of this one than you did out of the prior one, provided the games don't depend on the D-pad at the moment. But where this really shines is with game streaming, in my opinion, because a lot of times we're hooking up our smartphones to a game controller with some kind of clamp. Here you've got something that feels really solid in the hand and feels more like a proper gaming device. This first image here is from Xbox Cloud Gaming. This is part of their Game Pass Ultimate subscription. I am getting a lot of value out of that Game Pass subscription, and you can just boot up their native app and start playing. This is Forza 5 the day it came out. Push a button, no download. You can start streaming it from the Microsoft servers, and then when you're ready to install it on your Xbox in your living room, it will sync up where you last left off in the game. Pretty cool stuff, and it worked great on this device. The controller mapped up just fine, no problem, and I was really enjoying things quite a bit there. I also like to look at GeForce Now because this service runs at a higher bit rate than the Microsoft service does, but this ran equally well. I played a little No Man's Sky here, one of my favorite games to mess around with on the PC, and it just ran very smoothly. The controls work great, just like they did on the Xbox side of things, and it was a great way to access some of my Steam library, the parts that the developers allow me to play on GeForce Now, but all in a very good experience, even on a more demanding service. Now, one thing you'll need for this is a good Wi-Fi signal. So when I was testing this, my AC Wi-Fi access point is like right in front of me on the ceiling over there. So you'll want to get kind of close to your access point for the best results, but play around with it a little bit and see what works best. I have found that the Xbox service runs at a much lower bit rate than GeForce Now or Stadia runs at, so it's a little more forgiving, although the image quality on GeForce Now and Stadia tends to be a little bit better because it runs at a higher bit rate. And it's pretty comfortable to hold. It's got these nice grips in the back here. The weight isn't bad either on this, 13.2 ounces or 374 grams. So if you are playing games over a long period of time, you'll feel less fatigued than you might on a Nintendo Switch that is more flat on the back there. It's just got a nice grip to it. But I am not going to recommend this for people that are looking for 8 and 16-bit emulation. And the reason is that the D-pad here just isn't cutting it for me. You might want to look at the older GPD for that, and you'll save some money in the process here. This is just a much better system for playing those older games. And also, its screen is not nearly as wide, so I think the games actually look a little better on the prior edition just due to how wide the screen is here. But if you're into Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, all of that stuff I think will do very nicely here. And of course, the game streaming was a great experience on this device and something I think I'll be using this for quite a bit around the house. So unfortunately, not perfect. It is not the all-in-one solution that I was hoping for. I was hoping for just a little bit more performance to get the GameCube running well on it, but we're just not quite there yet. So hopefully when the revision of this comes out, they'll address some of those issues and make this my all-in-one solution. But right now, the solutions for it are limited to the things that we talked about in the review here. So that's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Hot Sauce and Video Games, Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Tom Albrecht, Thomas Anfang, Jim Tanis, and Handheld Obsession. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.